him at the bond gate, basically presentation that he gave in Las Vegas. And so we're going to go into a lot more detail, actually. A lot of you guys haven't maybe seen him before. He's been around for at least a couple of years that I've been watching him. So I'm very, very excited to have him on. Mitchell Wexler is president and founder of Mockingbird Properties, Hedge Realty Advisors, and affiliate based in Dallas, Texas. Mr. Wexler has over 30 years of experience in commercial real estate and has held interest in more than 85 property investment entities throughout the United States and Canada. He is a developer, general partner, and manager investment entities that own and operate high quality retail and Class A multifamily, with additional projects now being planned. His education includes earning a certificate of business administration from the University of Windsor, Canada, in 1984. Over the years, Mr. Wexler has implemented statistical probability analysis, which is now at the very core of Mockingbird's operations. Utilizing the mathematical background of each member of the Mockingbird team, they are able to find potential problems before they occur and address designs and budgets accordingly. Mitch, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to explain a little bit of what's going on and get in under the hood so that mom and pop can really understand the circumstances that we all face due to fraud.
Yeah, it's monumental, and you've talked about in some presentations that I've seen you present, that the property tax basically is a massive fraud system that is on the verge of collapsing our economy as a whole.
Well, you've got roughly 5.1 trillion of outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt today. However, that is what we can quantify. We know there are 313 agreements. We know there are off-balance sheet financing. We know that the Economic Development Commissions, the EDCs, are playing all sorts of games. We know about the energy contracts. We've seen all this. We've seen it in writing. We've seen the contracts. The problem is it can't be quantified. And as we sit here now, even though it's 5.1 trillion, that's what we can quantify. That's what we can see. There's nobody that we know of in the United States, including the Federal Reserve itself, that can put their hands on a document and says, we have X dollars outstanding in QSIPs. Those are the actual certificates attached to the amortization schedules for each one of these bonds that has been produced. And in truth, they're not paying off these bonds. They haven't paid them off at least since the year 2000. They've been rolling them up and rolling the interest rate up. So they roll out in time the bond. They don't retire them. They just roll them, and then they roll the interest rate up. Well, the compound cumulative effect of that interest today and those bonds, let's call it, for the sake of conversation, 5.1 trillion. But do you realize that in 20 years, because these can go from 20 to 40 years out, that 5.1 turns into 17 trillion. That's the problem. It's not just the fact that it can't be paid off today because the median household income doesn't exist to pay it. It doesn't exist tomorrow morning. It's so bad that if you wanted to reduce the US national debt in the next 12 months, our gross domestic product in the United States would have to go to $51 trillion effective tomorrow morning. That is impossible. That is not going to happen. Today, just to give you an idea, that would be a 100% increase in the 25 trillion gross domestic product. You'd have to go from 25 to 51 just to pay off 2 trillion. Do you know what's happened in the last 90 days with regard to the US deficit? 2 trillion. What happens to a deficit? They have to print money to cover the deficit because the income on the federal level doesn't exist. Just like the median household income at mom and pop's level does not exist to pay for the fraudulent school district bond debt. Two things, exact same railroad track.
Wow. So let's go back in time. Let's look at where this all started. We, became a nation, and we started, earning income through tariffs and so forth. That paid for everything. We had amazing structures all around the world. It looks like, or at least in America, and everything was paid for through what President Trump is bringing back. The tariffs. So let's walk through it. Here's the shadow ledger.
The nexus of this particular report that I wrote is the fact that there's two sets of books. There's a set of books that the government wants people to see, but there's also the reality of what they can't see. And that in reality has been the problem. And that is the exact same problem today. Two different sides of the government, one being federal, the other being state, doing the exact same thing, lying to the public and hiding the evidence. What we have here, this is called the shadow ledger. And this goes back in time. So a century of accounting fraud, equity stripping, and the mathematical breaking point. The official story is that before 1913, there was no federal income tax. The textbook narrative claimed the government survived solely on modest tariffs, land sales, and excise tax. The physical reality was that between 1865 and 1913, the US built infrastructure rivaling that of Europe, funded a standing military, built the Panama Canal, and completed the Transcontinental Railroad. Again, off of land sales and excise taxes and a little bit of tariffs. Yeah, no. So the old post office in 1899 was 3.2 million, built out of granite. The USS Indiana, also part of that, 3 million. The Montana State Capitol, 485,000 in federal appropriations. Then it goes on. So matrix number one, in the 1890s, the math anomaly. In 1880, 186 million tariff revenue. This is on the federal side. 1890, 43 million total revenue, approximately 57% customs, 30% alcohol, tobacco, and excise taxes. 1900, 233 million tariff revenue. 1910, 333 tariff revenue. But the actual infrastructure costs, the output in 1880, 268 million. You have a problem here. 1890s, the output, 27 new federal courthouses. The Navy was expanded from 42 to 95 ships. 1910, the expenditures, 694 million. The math doesn't match the building. The expenditures ballooned while official revenue saw only modest gains. The gap widened every year. Then we come into the huge buildings. The scale, 420,000 square foot, 120-foot dome, Corinthian columns, Indiana limestone, gold leaf interiors. The price, 400,000 built in 18 months, according to their documents, right? The Washington Monument, in comparison, was 1.2 million and took 36 years.
So is that where they're starting to do the accounting scam? Because that's a massive building for only, very, very small fraction of what the Washington Monument was.
Yeah, but look at the size of it. 420 feet, 420,000 square feet versus the reality of the Washington Monument. So the Treasury reality is that in 1891, the total federal expenditures were 365 million against 219 million in customs revenue. The US Treasury was already running $146 million deficit, yet they fully funded that building, which was only supposed to be temporary. Where did the money come from? So then it goes on, and you begin to see some of these problems with regard to, quote, the gold reserve. That, does it exist? Does it not exist? To be determined. But there was actually, all the way back in the 1900s, what was called the Aldrich Gap. It was a report given to Congress. So the official explanation for all this claims that the economic growth and the tariffs drove the gold price and the inflows. But a $100 million tariff increase cannot generate 1.3 billion in the gold reserve explosion. Was it true? Is it true? Who knows? They still don't have an audit on the US Treasury. So then we go on to find the accountants, and this is all available online. Mary Ducati, the testimony in 1938, per her testimony, described a ledger system with separate columns, special appropriations that she wasn't permitted to discuss. And it goes on. John Hastings, the same thing. Samuel Birch, testimony in 1942, processed millions in mining royalties sent directly to Washington via different channels, not the regular books. The records vanished. And on that note, I'm going to stop here just for a second. You have this exact same problem playing out with the school districts and the central appraisal districts. So the central appraisal districts miraculously switch software every 2 or 3 years. The logs for that software disappears. The central appraisal districts, we caught them. This has happened to me. They destroyed evidence and admitted it in a deposition after a subpoena. The documents and the evidence disappears. So I'm going to go on to the next one, the systemic erasure timeline. And as you go through this, the Aldrich Commission, which is what we were just reporting on, that's the story of all these accountants being deposed. Senator Nelson Aldrich identifies a $340 million gap in the expenditures lacking the sourcing. Where did the money come from? Request documentation from the Interior Department, none produced. And it goes on and on. Then miraculously, a fire occurs. How convenient. Yeah. Treasury Department, Annex Fire destroys the Internal Revenue records between 1890 and 1910. An electrical malfunction. The audit, the Interior Department, Internal Audit declares pre-1913 land records incomplete and unreliable. Many were discarded. So you begin to see the pattern of practice. Then we go on to the next one, the 16th Amendment. The government, power to tax individuals directly, 1% to 7% graduated tax, sold to the public as progressive reform and fairness, pure propaganda. The timing suggests replacement, not addition. If the pre-1913 system was secretly generating massive wealth, why tax individuals? The Federal Reserve Act itself in 1913, a private consortium of banks gains control over the money supply and the credit system. Senator William Borah of Idaho warned the income tax would create a permanent administrative apparatus dependent on a revenue source that required perpetual expansion. It's called compound cumulative interest. The exact same thing that is playing out on the Federal Reserve because it was only built to support the banks. Wouldn't it be great if we could stop bank runs? Well, that's called corporate socialism. What do we have on the state side? School districts. Let's do this for the kids. Both lines are pure propaganda. Both lines are pure fraud. And the effect of what they have done between the two of them, the Federal Reserve and the school districts, is create the largest fraud the world has ever known. This is a Ponzi scheme of biblical proportions, for which there is no math on this planet that can pay off these debts.
So, Mitch, do you think that, from early on, they were bringing enough money, but they were hiding the money, or they just were overspending and they needed more money? What was really going on? What are your thoughts?
I think you have the exact same thing playing out today where they want what they want. So in the case of the Federal Reserve, they'll print it. What they were doing then was literally running two sets of books.
Okay.
What is happening today with these school districts? In essence, they're running two sets of books. I don't believe there's a single school district superintendent in the United States that if they're raising bonds isn't committing accounting fraud and bond fraud. We have their ledgers. We have school district ledgers. Do you know they even have hidden investment pools? That's the terminology, investment pool. The teachers themselves don't even know that those investment pools exist. Who paid in? Who's got the tenure? Who's running it? What's the percent of the fees? Where's the profit? None of it is there, but yet the investment pool exists. They're running two sets of books. But isn't it interesting that in this document here, the accountants were complaining that they weren't given all the information? What is the tagline when you ask the accountants who are supposed to be auditors by law, at least here in the state of Texas, that are responsible for auditing these school districts? What is the tagline? Well, we're only looking at what we were given. Good. That's not an audit. That's aiding and abetting a criminal conspiracy to defraud. Now, what happened in 2007 with the accounting firms? Exact same thing. We were only doing what we were given. Okay. A lot of them went out of business. A lot of them got sued. Where are we? 2007. Exact same thing, except magnitudes larger. Because the debt, give or take, between 2007 and today is somewhere between 6 and 10 times the size of what it was in 2007. In fact, the school district bond fraud itself is 80 times larger than the Enron collapse.
Wow. Yeah, disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. So the fraud migrates to the local ledger. The exact same pattern and practice to defraud has metastasized to the local level, be it the school district bonds. The auditor's alibi. Modern auditing firms provide cover to the fraudsters using the exact historical playbook that we're outlining here in this document. Independent reports reveal bond election fraud. If you go to my website, we now have 5 independent reports, including from, of all places, the California Policy Center, where in 2015, after a 14-year study, they called the bonds toxic. And inside of that report, they even showed how the bonds were actually being manipulated for the advertising for the bonds. That is called election fraud. You have off-balance sheet financing, 313 agreements, the chief appraisers colluding with the districts to cook the books. And then we go on to the next one, matrix number 2. The manufactured illusion in 1913, in quotes because propaganda, progressive reform and fairness, neither one of which has a quantitative number. Progressive reform, what does that mean? Hell if I know. And fairness, purely subjective, means nothing. In 2024, what's the tagline? For the children. Wouldn't it be great if we did this for the children? Straight out of the Socialist Handbook.
Yep.
Federal Reserve. Let's do this to stop bank runs. Corporate socialism. Straight out of the Socialist Handbook. The hidden mechanism, income tax and central banking. In 2024, school district bonds and central appraisal district appraisals, both of which are fraud, both of which are dependent on each other. The true beneficiaries out of all this, the banks, the corrupt administrators and the underwriters who are getting paid to commit accounting fraud and bond fraud. And by the way, just in case you think that this is, well, where's the evidence? mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD. If you want to see one document that outlines this, it's called the amicus brief. You can search for it. That amicus brief is now sitting in front of the Supreme Court of Texas. Everything we're speaking about here is quantified, done, and 2 prior courts admitted fraud occurred. They didn't want to hear the case, but nonetheless, they admitted that fraud occurred. Bottom insight: in both eras, the illusion of public benefit is used as a smokescreen to enact mass accounting fraud and extract wealth from the public. And that wealth being extracted now is so large and so great. In Denton Central Appraisal District alone, over $7.5 billion has been stolen by overvaluation of the properties just in the last 5 years alone. That 5.1 trillion, think of what mom and pop could be doing if they had that money in their hands today. That money represents between 7,000 and 8,000 per year in money that would be in their pocket. Over and above that, the difference for 42 million households in the United States who are in harm's way of bankruptcy and are losing the roof over their head, that bankruptcy can be caused at $9,000. Out of that $9,000, $7,000 to $8,000, give or take, is real estate tax. Where exactly are mom and pop going to go to get their money back from which they have been defrauded?
Yeah, and this tax keeps going up. Insurance rates go up because the appraisal of property, basically, the insurance is tied to that as well. So yeah, it's compounding and compounding and compounding, fraud upon fraud upon fraud. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but it's a little bit worse than that, because it turns out that a lot of the data that spins, and the data, make no mistake, at these central appraisal districts is totally corrupted. It literally isn't worth toilet paper. So what they're doing, they get comparisons and they say, well, this property over here is a comparison. Yeah, except that property is in another city. It's not a comparison. It violates USPAP. Let's refer to Texas, but everything I say refers to Texas. You got the same thing in every other state.
I was about to ask you
with regard to Texas, what we've done is we took USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, which is required by law across the United States to be used in all CADs. We took USPAP, we tied it to the Texas Property Tax Code, we tied it to the Texas Education Agency, we tied it to the Texas Constitution under Uniform and Equal, and we tied it to the U.S. Constitution under the 16th Amendment. As far as I know, this is the first time in history that this has ever been done. But the net result of all of this proves fraud on a mass scale. This is an industrialized fraud on a mass scale. Their databases are totally corrupted. And to that point, if you have data set A, data set B, data set C, D, and E, if data set A is dependent on data set B, and data set B has a problem, data set A must have a problem. Well, you've got multiple ways that they're manipulating this data. We even found them manipulating the age of the buildings because it's tied to other formulas in their software. Their software is written to defraud the public. These RPAs, registered professional appraisers, their licensing is considered so important by TDLR, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. They share the same department as bikini waxers. The point being, their license isn't worth anything. Their existence is a scam on mom and pop, pure fraud, and it's overseen by the chief appraisers and the deputy chief appraisers who know damn well that the law is being broken and choose to do nothing about it. But that problem puts them in federal court, if not federal prison. Under Chapter 42, U.S. Code 1986, knowledge of a crime and power to prevent. The reason why I put this entire documentation together and the website, and I filed the lawsuits, is because they cannot escape that clause. None of them can. Not their attorneys, not their accountants, not the people who are responsible. You now know of the crime. You now have the power to prohibit that crime, to prevent. They chose not to do it. They have a problem.
You've done an incredible job of exposing this like no one else. You're invaluable. Now, you even said that Ken Paxton signed off on it, and even Greg Abbott signed off on this. So it looks like the fraud goes all the way to the top.
100%. So we filed a criminal complaint with the FBI, the DOJ, and the SEC.
Wow.
And it was, I believe, the DOJ that reached out to Ken Paxton, because a few days later, on December 7th, he issued a 1,000 district investigation into the overvaluation. Why did he do that? Because inside of the criminal complaint, and as I've said, none of this was personal other than for Don Spencer. Mr. Spencer, I intend to put him in jail. That's exactly where he belongs.
Good.
With regard to these other players, I don't know whether they go to jail or not. That's not my job. My job is to figure out exactly what the hell happened here, because I'm a builder and I want to build. But I can't do that if I'm being extorted on money and income that doesn't exist. And when I say that, Denton Central Appraisal District is literally writing income statements and expense numbers and saying that that is the income of my property. Yet that's not what is on my IRS tax return. If I walked into a bank with the BS that Denton Central Appraisal District offered, I would be arrested. In reality, fraud. I would be, because if I walked out of that bank with an extra $1.7 million in a mortgage, that's bank fraud. So why do I get arrested and they get off scot-free when they are literally writing it? We have this all in writing. Over and above that, just so everybody realizes how serious this is, Don Spencer is on tape. It's on my website. It's in front of the Supreme Court. It's documented. This is a quote, we took 60,000 properties outside of the database, manipulated them in Excel, and put them back.
Wow.
It's called tampering with government documents. So yeah, a very, very serious problem. But at the end of the day, all these people have been now named in these criminal complaints, and there's more on the way. So the next step of this, how does the fraud mechanism work? Well, step one, as far as the public is concerned, let's manipulate them. Let's lie. Let's manufacture an illusion. After all, this is for the children. That's the hook. That's the socialist playbook. Propose a project with unassailable moral framing. Well, what? You don't like children? You're not in favor of the education of children? That's the hook. That's the propaganda. Protect against the bank runs. Well, wait a minute. Banks are in business to make money. They charge interest on that money. If they screw up, why is that a problem of the taxpayer, be it federal or state? Doesn't matter. Why is that a problem that is now on the back, which is in reality every deficit, every time the Federal Reserve prints money, that's on the back of mom and pop? Why is that? It's not our job to bail out the criminals. That's why they're called criminals.
Yeah.
We're going to help the children. Yeah, no, you're not. Do you know that right now the bond money that's being raised, not 10 cents is going to any child? Not
Wow.
10 cents of the interest in the sinking fund is going to a teacher. It's going to cover interest because somewhere around the year 2000, the interest jumped the principal. All this money that's being demanded to be raised in like Salina, Texas, just a few months ago, $2.5 billion, that added $257,000 per house in Salina, worth of a hidden second mortgage, which every homeowner in one fell swoop got put on their house.
Wow.
Give or take, let's call that 70, 75% hidden second mortgage that every property owner in Salina is now responsible for. By the way, I ran the math. Interesting story. Salina is landlocked. If they double the amount of houses tomorrow morning, which they can't do, and they don't even have the room to do it, but just follow the theory. If they double the amount of houses, they can't pay down that $2.5 billion. They can't pay it off, nor can they pay off the current $500 million that's outstanding. See the problem? We want it. We'll just keep putting it on the back of mom and pop, except it's in the process of blowing up now because there are actually schools here in Texas that are filing bankruptcy, and more are on the way quickly.
Wow.
So that was step one. Step two, secret accounting, the setup. Issue bonds or restructure taxes through opaque channels, hidden ledgers, and compromised audits. Remember, this goes back all the way to the beginning of the Federal Reserve. The nexus between these two things in today's world and the Federal Reserve is socialism. It's fraud. Step three, compounding interest, the trap. The debt begins to grow exponentially, locking the public into perpetual repayment obligations, except for one thing. 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution prohibits taxation of an unrealized gain. What do you think market value that you pay your property taxes is? Market value is an unrealized gain. That statement has never been challenged in the courts. The states got away with doing what they're doing because people chose to turn a blind eye to what was clearly at that time fraud. I have the bond numbers, the original bond formula for the state of Texas when they had made the decision we're going to allow bonds to be raised. That document is in the hands of the Supreme Court. And look at the amicus brief. But that bond formula was wrong by intent. All it had to do is say, well, what if these theories inside the bond formula weren't true? What if the median household income didn't exist? What if interest rates go up? Where's the amortization schedule? How does that affect the amortization schedule? How does that affect the value of the bonds themselves? Who gets the money? How is the money going to be accounted for? In that document that I just sent you like 15, 20 minutes ago, those questions are in that document.
Yep.
Anybody that answers those is headed to jail.
So what year was it when they started doing the school bonds? It's probably varies per state, but what
exactly? It does vary per state. We found them as far back as 1974, but I believe they were there before that. We have the formula, which for the state of Texas, which is more important, but other states had tried this. The issue, though, being they didn't in the beginning. They got away with it. Okay, fine. But when the school districts became, well, we're going to start doing this and we're going to start paying the superintendents $300, $200, $525,000, it became a cash grab. The math flipped very close to the year 2000 in the case of the state of Texas. Interestingly enough, coming back to the criminal complaint that named Governor Abbott, and again, not a personal issue. I even said I may have to vote for him. Better the devil I know. But the bottom line is he was the attorney general in 2001. It flipped where the interest became bigger than the principal. Turns out Governor Abbott is also the chairman of the bond review board for the state of Texas. It has a different set of numbers because they're not tracking all the bonds, which raises that question. Why isn't the bond review board left hand for the state not tracking what the Texas Education Agency is tracking? Why is that? Then it also goes down the path of, okay, Governor, you were the attorney general. How many times did you modify the laws to kick this can down the road between the year 2001 and 2026? The answer is 8. Every time, Homestead, CAP, anything they made the attempt of doing to placate the public who was screaming that they couldn't afford it, all failed. And it all failed because, as it turns out, attorneys are really bad at math or criminal intent. Governor, exactly how much money have you received from the Texas Education Agency and or the teachers union? Why don't you bring that to court? We'll have a little chit chat.
Nice. And just think of all those states doing the same thing, all those counties, every single county. Yep.
Yeah. And as I said, it's not that it's a personal thing. People say, well, this is just the system. No, not at all. Mr. Paxton, are you not an attorney? Mr. Paxton, as an attorney, you're an officer of the court deemed to have knowledge. The same thing goes for Governor Abbott, Glenn Hagar, ex-state comptroller, who's in this up to his eyeballs, all documented. TDLR, TALCB, the Attorney General's office have all stated in writing, well, we don't have the authority to enforce. The Attorney General's office right now is sitting without an answer to a Freedom of Information Act request, 15 pages that we wrote. They won't answer it because it leads to people going to jail. Again, in front of the Texas Supreme Court. Not my job to put people in jail. I want to build. I want to protect mom and pop. I know what these problems are. For whatever reason, one thing leads to another, and that's where we are today. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we're tracking every stitch of this. So then on to step number 4, the wealth transfer, the equity stripping. That's their goal. Control the money, control the people. What is equity stripping? Well, as mom and pop sleeps, their amortization that they are entitled to by virtue of paying down their mortgage is literally being stripped to the point that A, you don't own the house you're in, you're paying ground lease, ground rent, which there is no law to allow that to happen. And by virtue of increasing the taxation, the net effect of increasing those taxes means you've got to get the money from somewhere. Well, it's coming out of your mortgage. What would be your amortization, so you'd have something to retire on, is being equity stripped while you sleep. That's the point of all of this. The hard assets and labor value of society are quietly transferred into the pockets of the co-conspirators, underwriters, administrators, and the cycle repeats. But it gets even deeper. One must realize, per 2007, we're right back to the problem with the rating agencies. These bonds are AA, AAA. These bonds are sub-junk. This stuff isn't going to pay off. Mathematically speaking, what's it really worth? Without the connotation of fraud, somewhere around 13 cents on the dollar. But you'd have to freeze the interest effective immediately. You'd have to back up the interest, probably 7 years back, and then come up with a plan to pay it off. The point of the matter is, in most of these states, that can't happen because the debt is so large, it can never be paid back. The intersection of history and mathematics, the arithmetic exposes the intent. The median household income is the black line, the compounding debt and the interest. Notice where it crosses? In 1913, the system was designed to require perpetual expansion. We've reached the mathematical breaking point where the host can no longer feed the parasite. The median household income no longer exists to pay the interest, let alone the principal. The result? Without immediate intervention, mass write-downs and bankruptcies are mathematically inevitable. The delayed discovery has metastasized into the 401ks and pensions. This just broke a week ago.
Oh, wow.
In New York, Moody's came out and said the bond ratings are now negative.
Wow.
The city of New York has a negative bond rating. Problem is that A, they're protecting their hind end. B, too little, too late. C, city of New York has been committing fraud for 50 years because the pensions never had the population necessary to feed the increased demand on those pensions. More than likely what's going to happen, those pensions are probably worth 30 cents on the dollar, maybe a little bit more, who knows? Does that mean that the Federal Reserve is going to print money to bail them out? Highly unlikely. Does that mean the Federal Reserve is going to print money to bail out 5.1 trillion of what we know is the case? Nobody knows. But here's the point. The inflation we now see when you go to the grocery store, when you go to buy a house, that inflation is a direct result of fraud. Fraud occurs when you print money that isn't backed by assets. That is what is going to happen. The Federal Reserve prints, inflation will go parabolic. You'll end up with the Weimar Republic. There are ways to deal with this. There's no doubt about that. And that's part of our goal, was to force the state of Texas to make the phone call to the Federal Reserve and tell the truth, and everybody sit in a room and come up with a solution. I've got ideas, but me talking to myself is completely useless. So these are the problems that we all face.
This is obviously planned obsolescence of the system, and they're gone. They're not going to be held accountable. I guess they probably planned that. Who do you think is it possible that anybody gets held accountable at this point, or how's this going to get? We can't. You have you have something that can fix it. We'll talk about that soon. But will anybody be held accountable?
I've written quite a bit about institutionalized systemic moral hazard. There is no doubt that these people are guilty. We've got them. We've got it 100% dialed in. Somebody's going to have to go to jail for all of this.
Wow.
It's not appropriate. And so look at it this way. You've got 34 states that have access to the federal bond market. These local school district bonds are not local. They're federal. They fall under the auspices of the SEC. Under no circumstance whatsoever should any school district have access to the bond market. What they have done is a proven fraud. Two courts have already admitted that fraud has occurred. This isn't up for debate. The reason the SEC has to get involved is to start putting people in jail to stop this. But part of the solution would be, okay, we got 5.1 trillion worth of bonds. Yes, it is in the 401ks, portions of them, and portions of them in the pensions and the IRAs. However, let's cut a deal. Let's put all those bonds into bankruptcy and wipe that liability off the back of mom and pop. Step one. Step two, we put the school districts into bankruptcy. Now you've wiped out that 5.1, but you still haven't solved the problem. The problem is the real estate tax itself. So in exchange for whoever gets hit, let's say they have a portfolio and 3 or 4 or 5% of the portfolio is related to school district bonds, maybe some municipal bonds, what have you. It's, give or take, it's relatively small. However, you're going to lose. Those bonds are going to go broke. Wow. They need to be put into bankruptcy, case closed. But what do you get back? Well, you get your house back. You get your property back. You own it in perpetuity. No more taxes. Now your amortization schedule that you're paying off every year is your money and it's your retirement. Right now, you don't have a retirement. You think you do, but you don't. It's being equity stripped while you sleep. So there are things that can be done. And yeah, I get it. It's tough. But you want your property back, or do you want to pay taxes in perpetuity where you don't own it?
We've got a nickname for you already in the chat. We're calling you Diamond Nuts. You need a lot of prayers because you got some diamond nuts out there, bitch. Good job.
So one of the questions, and it's an extremely important question, where is the money going to come from to pay off the fraud that is growing compound cumulative by the second? And that's true. Go to usdebtclock.org. You'll see exactly how fast this debt is growing. No institution has answered this question. Not the Federal Reserve with its 23,000 employees, not the school districts, not the bond underwriters, not the appraisal districts, not the rating agencies. Well, think of it for a second. You're the rating agency. You're the bond underwriter. And you can't answer the question, where's the money going to come from to pay this off? Yet you're selling this toxic garbage? Tell me they don't belong in jail.
Yep.
If they can't answer the math, for what purpose do these entities actually exist? Could their only purpose for existence be to defraud the public, to transfer public wealth to their coffers? And you have the apathy side of this, and that's the next document. Apathy is a real problem because it turns out you've got years upon years of indoctrination in schools not teaching people how to balance a checkbook. And people are very busy. Mom and pop are busy. They've got, in some cases, 2 or 3 jobs. They don't believe they have the time to get involved with civil responsibility. But that fact is exactly what these thieves and fraudsters are banking on. They're banking on the fact that most mom and pop don't want to get involved and see and understand what's really transpiring. And there's an interesting quote by Robert Kennedy. Few are willing to brave the disapproval of their fellows, the censure of their colleagues. Moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle, yet it is the one essential, vital quality for those who seek to change a world that yields most painfully to change. That quote fits what is happening with the Federal Reserve and the school districts to a T.
Mm-hmm.
These crimes aren't up for debate. This has happened. We've got all this documented, ledgered out. We have it built into boards for presentation with live links to the evidence on my website. So should a juror ask a judge a question? No problem. We can bring it up. We can do a fast word search, bring up the actual evidentiary document, of which there's over 1,100. And along that line, we've even asked quite often on these videos, if somebody sees something that is wrong, let us know. We're not offended. We're not perfect. However, you may see something that's wrong. So far, that hasn't been the case. But here's the point. Even if there was something wrong on one document, no problem. I still got 1,100 documents to go. The point of the matter is it doesn't change the story. This is a story about fraud. This is about mom and pop's transfer of their wealth to fraudsters. And the path forward, obviously, is to stop the equity stripping. And the way you do that is you repeal all property tax in favor of the uniform states sales tax. And if somebody needs help on their website, on Travis Spencer's website, realestatemindset.org, to understand how to do their own comparisons, do not trust a central appraisal district. They will lie to your face. You may not know that they're lying, but they're lying. The point of the matter is go in with your comparisons. But over and above that, it's crucial that everybody get involved in their civil responsibilities. Go to these school district meetings. Let these boards know you've got eyeballs and you're watching. Let them know you've got a pen. More important, let them know you've got a camera and a witness, because that's what you should take with you every time you walk into a central appraisal district. The second they lie, you've got it on tape. Take it, put it up on social media. The power is in the camera, and the power is in the hands of mom and pop. We've already done our job to call these criminals out. We're at the Supreme Court of Texas. Now it's the job of mom and pop to pick up the ball and run with it.
Yeah, that's great. So phenomenal information. It's definitely going to make a difference, I think, going forward. So people are starting to understand the depth of this incredible fraud. When I saw this, I was just absolutely dumbfounded. So you also have a presentation on Bondgate. Do you want to jump into that one?
Sure. So these graphics came up about 10 days ago or so on diffusing the bomb, which is the 5.1 trillion. But one should realize that's, again, what is quantified. It doesn't mean that's the whole enchilada, because it's not. This money is spread out everywhere through every community. These economic development commissions here in Dallas, just recently, the Economic Development Commission put in about $14 million for a multifamily rehab of an old jail under the theory that it was a historic building because the Beatles once stayed there as a hotel. Okay. The cost for this, quote, low-income housing is about $625,000 per apartment unit.
Good God.
I can build that brand new, including a parking garage, for $325,000. I could have had that building knocked down, give or take, for about $700,000. Okay? You're $300,000 per apartment delta. How exactly is that low income? So 600,000, just so you're clear, 600,000, if you say 1%, well, give or take, that's about $6,000 a month in rent. How exactly is that low income?
Mm.
Nobody in their right mind would want to live in that location. It's right next to a power station. If you want to glow in the dark, I guess you want to live there. But other than that, you really don't want to live there. So that's part of what is happening here in this diffusing the bomb. The hidden fuse is going to be the fact of these school districts now starting to file bankruptcy. The fuse has been lit. Mom and pop don't have the money to pay for this. Who gets hurt? Well, in reality, all of society. See, we have inflation, and inflation touches the lives of every single person in the United States, including a child that's going to be born in the next 5 minutes. That baby food is going to cost more money because of inflation. Well, do you know that there's 7 elements of real estate tax in your cappuccino? The higher the real estate tax, the higher the cost of the cappuccino or the baby food. It's not just the property owners. This fraud touches the lives of every single American citizen. You've got 42 million households that are near bankruptcy right now today. $9,000 is the only thing that separates them from survival or bankruptcy, and somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 of that is the real estate tax. These problems compound. They get bigger and bigger because they never get paid off. There's no money to pay this off. And in truth, there's no money to pay for the interest, never mind paying off the debt. Who's got it? Your 401ks and your pensions. The bonds, as I said, are worth roughly 13 cents on the dollar, assuming the interest is frozen in place and backed up by about 7 years. So what happens in Argyle, Texas, you have a median household value of about $450,000 with roughly $243,000 in outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt. Godley, Texas, $120,000 in outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt, where the average value of a house in Godley, Texas is $160,000. How did that happen in the middle of nowhere? Well, they've got a stadium that rivals SMU. That's how it happened. And they never had the population to sustain it.
Wow.
Just like it was when the government started spending money on 420,000 square foot granite buildings. 2 sets of books. So what we have to have is an immediate transparency. How much in true outstanding fraudulent school district bonds exist? Match it to the QSIPs. Match it to the amortization schedules, which are supposed to be part of the QSIPs. Do you know, with everything we've been doing, we can't get a single answer from anybody? No government entity apparently knows. So we have the idea of how to fix that, which is repeal the property tax. Within 60 days, when such a document was to be signed, the school districts would have to determine and hand in, we can survive this, we can pay these bonds off within 3 years. If they can't pay it off, that's the trigger. Put them into bankruptcy. Put the school district into bankruptcy, bankrupt the bonds. That's going to have to happen. That's going to be the playbook in order to rescue mom and pop.
Hmm.
The Freedom of Information Act is a complete waste of time at this point because the system as we speak is imploding. The Attorney General for the state of Texas has refused to answer those 15 pages of questions.
Wow.
In fact, they're in a position right now where I could sue them for that. But I'm tired of wasting time on this because I see what's happening. I see the mom and pop don't have them. And the point of all of this is if mom and pop don't have the money to pay and they've got their hands out, we'll pay us or we'll take your house. I want everybody to realize what that means. That is the abject definition of RICO, both under the federal and state laws. What they have done by creating these debts and making a demand is the abject, and it matches all 7 points under RICO, including cross county lines and cross state lines. It's all there. Every single element, the box has been checked. That's where all this heads. So then we go on. An interesting quote by Thomas Jefferson. I sincerely believe that the principle of spending money to be paid in posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. It's Thomas Jefferson. Look at the date, 1816. They've known at the creation of the Federal Reserve what was going on. The banks paid the politicians and conned the politicians, attorneys who can't add, yet the bankers knew damn well the power of an amortization schedule. And that's what they've done. They played the politicians. Here's some money. We will control the public's money. We will control the interest. And we, the Federal Reserve, will control the purse strings via the printing of more money to be paid, interestingly enough, by posterity. Your family is the posterity. You will pay this in perpetuity until you bleed out. The problem is that society's already bled out. That's why you're now seeing these school districts file bankruptcy. This is now why you've got over 4.2 million tax liens, property tax right now today.
Yeah. A lot of people losing their homes because they can't, the taxes keep going up and they can't afford it. It's crazy.
When I first realized the problem back in 2016, my gut instinct was, oh my, this is real bad because this is going to end in civil war. And as it turns out, that's a high probability because what do you think is going to happen when so many people lose their homes and eventually they realize it was due to fraud? This has got nothing to do with legitimate reasons for taxation. There's a whole section on my website for legitimate reasons as written by Thomas Paine for taxation. This is about fraudulent taxation. Mm-hmm. This is about equity stripping. This is about crimes being committed against mom and pop. Your home is no longer your asset. You didn't consent to going bankrupt for your local school district. You didn't consent to have the Federal Reserve print money to backstop a bank from going bankrupt. The modern property tax system is no longer funding chalkboards or teachers. It exists almost entirely to service the compound interest of the fraudulent Wall Street held municipal bonds. Why Wall Street? Well, 2% of assets under management when you're running a $14 trillion fund, it's not a bad day at the office. They don't give a damn that this thing makes money. They're in it for the fees. You're being taxed on unrealized gains to pay off the debt that you never agreed to. You have no notice or opportunity to cure about this debt. The school districts themselves don't even know how much debt is out there, or they won't answer the question. Either way, they're complicit in aiding and abetting a criminal conspiracy to defraud that they created. It's the exact definition of equity stripping, the compound death spiral. This is just the reality. That's what's happening to the debt. So every time they produce debt, they add more interest, compound cumulative interest. Oh, but wait, there's more. Every year and a half, the school districts need more money. After all, it's for the children. Okay? Now you've got compound cumulative principal on top of compound cumulative fraud. The median household income never changed because most of that median household income is having to go to service other inflation. Ergo, everything that is happening at the school district bond level, complete fraud, and it cannot be paid off. So this leads some of the comments that I've seen, well, it's just small in comparison to the overall US national debt. You don't understand. It's 5.1 trillion that we can quantify. It's more, but it's growing just like that red line is growing. But here's the problem. It's in addition to the US national debt. It's not part of it. This is a whole separate bucket, big bucket. Your subprime mortgages crashed in 2008. It's exactly what's going to happen here. We're going to wake up one day, and my fear is that the market makes the move because the politicians are lazy, stupid, ignorant, call it whatever you want, or complicit in aiding and abetting a criminal conspiracy to defraud. But if the market wakes up and says, we no longer have faith in these bonds, you will have a snowball turn into an avalanche within hours, and it won't be stoppable because that's what the market does. When people realize what's going on, they head for the doors at the exact same time. They'll head for the exits in the market. You'll see the NASDAQ drop 1,000, 2,000 within a couple hours.
Yep.
That's when the bonds start imploding, because what is the real value of the bonds? And people who say, well, but we've got US treasuries, et cetera, you're missing the point. What is the value? Prove it. What is the value of these school district bonds for which there is no ability to pay them off? We're going to hit $40 trillion shortly on the US national debt. Again, there are answers, but this has to be dealt with simultaneously, or the market will eventually do it, not just for the United States, we'll do it for the globe. And you will have a global depression out of fear because people don't want to deal with this.
Yeah, somebody made a comment in the chat where what happened to the lotto money going to the schools? And I live in a very high end neighborhood, and basically I went down to Rayleigh's to buy something, and they had donated $1 to the school fund. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like Larry Ellison lives here, so I'm sure he's paying a lot of property tax, or maybe not. Who knows? But there's some serious problems. All this money is being funneled into this for the children, the school system, and so forth, but it's not paying off the debt.
Nope. Not 10 cents is going to reduce the debt. Zero. It can't even cover off the interest. That's how big this has gotten.
Right.
So it's not going to the teachers. And I want to make that clear. The teachers themselves are getting ripped off. Right? Teachers have houses. Teachers have apartments. Police have houses. They have apartments. Firemen. Everybody's got a house or an apartment. People say, well, if I'm a renter in an apartment, I don't pay tax. Yeah, you do. You may not know it, but give or take 38 to 42% of what you're paying in rent is going towards property tax. So it affects everybody. Could you, as a renter, let's say the value of your apartment is $300,000 new construction costs. Well, if you're 2% in your district, could you use that $6,000 to cover your own overhead rather than pay it off towards interest on something that can't ever be paid down? That's the point where we are. When you factor in the median household income, the bonds are mathematically insolvent. In fact, the Texas Bond Guarantee Program, which Governor Abbott is a part of and oversees, allegedly has about $57 billion in cash. Interesting. How much school district bond debt exists for the state of Texas? Over $606 billion. Mom and pop can't pay for it. The $57 billion in the bond guarantee program can't pay for it. Well, what does that mean? Well, $57 billion cash is insolvent. It can't go for what it was intended to go for. I'm sure, and by the way, I've actually made an appeal to the SEC to seize the Texas bond guarantee program to make sure that money doesn't disappear as part of the bankruptcy. So even that is out there. There's not too much we haven't covered off.
Nice. Good job.
In the retail property, just to give you an idea, in Flower Mound, on my property specifically, a retail property, the fake income statement created by Denton Central Appraisal District took my values up after a settlement within 90 days, 280%, up to 420%. We'll just keep lying and keep making up false income statements. This is all papered. There's no defense for any of this. The median household income versus the value. In Denton, they said $514,000. Well, based on the median household income, it's not an average of $514,000 in median if the median income can only justify $296,000. So even what they're quoting as an average is a lie. The median household income in Denton County, that doesn't even take into account the inflation that's running right now. But that difference is $296,000 versus $514,000. So the wheel of complicity, the state comptroller, the attorney general, they provide zero enforcement. There's a wheel a little bit further down.
Thanks.
Yep, right there. Yep. So the state comptroller and the attorney general, they provide zero enforcement and no oversight. They turned a blind eye, but here's the problem for the attorney general. Under the Texas Education Agency, he is the sole signator to ensure that there is money available to pay off the bonds. There isn't, nor has there been since he was the attorney general. In essence, and in reality, he vacated his office. Now, it's true, he's out of office at this point. But the point of the matter is, he's an attorney, as an officer of the court, deemed to have knowledge, who violated the Texas Education Agency Act and who allowed the theft of billions of dollars across the state of Texas to be put into an entity for which there is no economic viability, be it the school district system. Same can be said for Glenn Hagar, the state comptroller. The Wall Street institutions, they purchase these toxic bonds and or they underwrite these toxic bonds, driving demand for higher property taxes. They don't care if mom and pop goes broke as long as they're getting their fees. The appraisal review boards, that was created as a direct result of the executive branch here in Texas. We'll put appraisal review boards together. We'll get some senior citizens and they're going to be there to help mom and pop. They're going to take the side of mom and pop. Another con. It was never real. They do as instructed and in fact are supposed to be independent, but they are not. They're bought and paid for by the CAD. You have Board of Equalization as an example in California. It is the exact same thing as the Appraisal Review Board. There is no due process with these appraisal review boards. That is the problem, and that's why we're at the Supreme Court of Texas. These appraisal review boards, another mechanism to placate mom and pop, but they have no knowledge of uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. They have no knowledge of what a CAD is supposed to be doing by law. They have no knowledge and refuse to even enter a conversation where the Texas Constitution is stated with regard to uniform and equal. How do I know this? Because I have this on tape on my cases. I literally have a person on tape who's on an ARB board stating, oh, I don't know anything about math. And they're discussing a retail property with an income statement.
Jesus.
You can't make this stuff up, but this is the truth.
They're not even qualified for that position. That's crazy.
They're not qualified to tie my shoelaces. I mean, that's the truth. So the central appraisal districts, they manufacture fake property values and fake budgets. It's all documented. I've got it on tape. I've got the evidence. I've got their own documents. That central appraisal district is in violation of over 67 documents that by law and or its membership in other entities is required to adhere to. This is as rogue can be. This is why these central appraisal districts must be terminated. You can never trust them. Their databases aren't worth toilet paper, and that's not an exaggeration. This is irreparable. There's nothing that can be done here. These must be terminated. You terminate the central appraisal districts. You take the power away from the school districts that should never have access to the bond market and federal market, or any market for that matter. Now you relegate the school district superintendents who are committing accounting fraud and bond fraud. You relegate them to picking principals. So now you take their $500,000 salary and give them what it should be, $80,000 max. Get the fraud out of the system. And we ran some numbers. Doesn't mean the numbers are perfect, but as an example, we figured out that just by getting rid of that fat in the middle, the savings to Denton County alone, year one, $7.5 billion. It's big money. The school districts themselves, they create the fraudulent predetermined budgets. They go with that predetermined budgets and have lunch with the chief appraisers. Here's our predetermined budget, hit it, okay? I defy anybody on this planet to explain to me what that has to do with uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. We took USPAP, we ran it through, and I wrote it. Excel. We double checked its math. There's nothing wrong with USPAP. Its problem is that nobody adheres to it. You may as well take USPAP and light it on fire. You may as well take the Texas Constitution and light it on fire. They don't adhere to it. That's why their databases are irretrievably corrupted. There is no saving these CADs. They must be terminated, as must property taxes. Well, that's the wheel of complicity. That ensnares the politicians. That ensnares the criminals who are actually aiding and abetting a criminal conspiracy to defraud, which, by the way, opposing counsel is also named in a criminal complaint. And I would, for everybody that's watching this, if you want to see what the definition of socialism is, at the top of my website are the two responses from opposing counsel, one for Don Spencer, one for DCAD. In those responses, his wish is taxation without representation. The War of Independence, 1775, the tagline in 1775 was no taxation without representation. Opposing counsel is literally asking the Supreme Court of Texas to violate the law. Opposing counsel is lying to the Supreme Court of Texas. Opposing counsel's wish is that this case goes away. Vexler's case is interfering with our ability to commit fraud. He's literally stating, we, Central Appraisal District and Don Spencer, are not responsible under the laws of the state of Texas and the United States of America.
Good God.
That's the truth. Go and read his responses. It's horrifying, which is exactly why he's named in the criminal complaint, because he is, in fact, aiding and abetting a criminal conspiracy to defraud. There's no defense for this. They're caught. This gets remanded to the lower courts, which is what we're asking the Supreme Court to do, so that it can be tried on its merits, which is fraud. Don Spencer, I intend to put him behind bars. I don't know what a judge is going to do, but I do know he's guilty. I do know because it's in his writing, opposing counsel. This is what you said to the Supreme Court. You said your clients are not guilty, but 2 prior courts admitted fraud occurred. These are the problems. So what else did the CADs do? Well, interestingly enough, something that you're very familiar with is election fraud. We have more on that topic coming shortly. But what is the nexus between election fraud and the PACS software that's used by the school districts and the Central Appraisal District, which do the heavy lifting for the school district? Well, it's the software. The software is designed to allow the registered professional appraisers, by law, that's who they're supposed to be. But in truth, it can allow anybody who's got access to change the database, to change the numbers within the database to meet the predetermined budget. Opposing counsel knows this. Don Spencer admitted it on tape in front of the board, as also backed up by Jeannie Ashlock, as also backed up by Deputy Chief Appraiser Chris Luttrell, where he states, well, we were just doing what we were taught. Okay. So my fast response off the top of my head was, Mr. Luttrell, if you were taught to commit murder, does it make it legal? The point of the matter is these people are as dumb as rocks. The problem is they're in positions of power, and they're in positions of stealing money. They have no business being in either. And frankly, any judge that goes to offer them cover should be removed from the bench. This is some very serious stuff. I don't know of another case this large across the United States where the evidence is this much in your face. It's not up for debate what has happened in any of these states or any of these school districts where these bonds are being raised. The facts are the facts. The evidence is the evidence. Trying to hide it is a crime in and of itself. U.S. Code 42, Section 1986, knowledge of a crime, power to prevent. So the law of USPAP lighted on fire. The Central Appraisal District methodology, there is no methodology. We're going to hit a predetermined budget. The standard of proof, it requires clear and convincing evidence for any valuation increase. What clear and convincing evidence is there with regard to your house? Everybody that's watching this, what did you do to your house in the last 5 years to drive its value up 100%? If inflation, according to the Federal Reserve, is running at 3% average per year for 5 years, that's 15%. Okay, let's be generous. Let's take it up 20%. What's the delta? 80%. What did you do to your house to drive the value up 80% in 5 years? The answer is nothing. That's the fraud. The standard of proof. Well, the board, Denton Central Appraisal District, board member says to Don Spencer, you are the masters at guessing. Okay. Where exactly inside a USPAP, a 300+ page document, does it say you get to guess? It doesn't. The software is designed to allow fraud to be committed. Guessing at values proves the complicity of the software itself. What happened with the election fraud? Software. The nexus between these two, voting, state levels, federal level, and the software used by these central appraisal districts, which is quite often being replaced with other software. The nexus is the software, the intentional lack of education, the intent to defraud. Why? To control the money, to control the population. They don't pay us, we'll just take their asset. RICO. This all ends in RICO. Or, which one of the reasons why I danced down this road in the beginning is because I saw what could happen, which is civil war. I don't want anybody getting hurt over this, but it's going to happen. Somebody's going to get shot. That'll be the shot across the bow to make people, unfortunately, wake up. The question is, will it be too late? This is real money. These people are screwing around with people's lives. They're stealing their house. They're stealing their ability to pay their rent. There was plenty of money, but when that money is going to pay off fraudulent interest, compound cumulative interest, then there isn't plenty of money. This is what has happened. And then we've even got communities. So that's the one where it says Copper Canyon proof. But do you know, in Denton County, just as an average, Argyle is at 243,000. But there's other communities, Aubrey and Pilot Point. So if you look at Denton and you say, okay, well, the taxes in Denton in 2025 went up roughly 32%. The problem is Aubrey, Pilot Point, Sanger, well, they're in Denton County, but they went up 42%. So how is that possible if the average is only 28? Well, those communities were targeted. So it's not just a little bit of fraud, it's fraud upon fraud. Who targeted those communities for more taxes? Glenn Hagar, the state comptroller, because he has something called the property valuation study. He picks up the phone, he calls the chief appraiser. I need you to increase the values even more because I got to take money from this district and put it to this district on the south side of Texas somewhere. Fraud upon fraud. And nobody in all of this ever bothered to put a pen and a piece of paper and start adding this up. Every person I've mentioned is complicit in aiding and abetting a criminal conspiracy to defraud. Here's the beauty of all this. They can't deny it. They also can't prove that I'm wrong. Just the opposite. We've given all the proof. It's on our website. What are you going to do? Deny that? Are you going to deny that the Attorney General opened a 1,000 district investigation across the state of Texas? But I want to make it clear, this isn't just Texas. There's 34 states that are allowing this to happen. Other states have it. It's just that they don't have access to the federal market, to the bond market. So
Mitch, do you know any other groups or states or whatever that are doing what you're doing?
There are groups, but part of the problem here is that people want to dance down rabbit trails that are unproductive. There are a lot of groups. Ohio is a hotbed where they're trying. Mm-hmm. But the point that I want to make is stop trying. Focus on what is achievable. What is achievable is what we've already done. We've laid out the math, how it was done, who did it, when it was done, how the fraud is committed at a local school district level. We've broken it down by the balance sheet. My website is loaded with this. My website even has how to audit your own school district. I wrote those documents. So it's under the articles, letters, and discussion section of my website. It's all there. It's all achievable. And I want to make a point about this. So a few days ago, I received an email, and I get a lot of emails. Unfortunately, she said in the very first sentence, I'm about to lose my house within the next few hours. She was conned. and it was too late to do anything. We've been able to help some people, getting them bankruptcy attorneys to temporarily get them out of harm's way. She was conned, and somebody sold her, well, you can become a sovereign individual and you can become part of the sovereign nation. So she danced down that rabbit trail, not paying her taxes and saying, well, this is what I'm applying for. Well, I was on a Zoom call with an awful lot of people, about 30 attorneys in that group, and they were dancing down the exact same road. And I told them in no uncertain terms, you're dead nuts wrong. And the reason you're wrong is your packaging. First of all, you're selling something that there is no judge alive in the United States right now that can follow that law going back almost 700 years is when that law first surfaced. So it was way before the United States of America was the United States of America. She paid for this information. This information was wrong. It's not that the law was wrong. You can't get a judge to follow it. So what I suggested is do what is achievable. Follow the math. Follow the fraud. Stop looking at all this other rabbit trail nonsense because it's going to end in disaster. Well,
Great
for
point.
that lady, it ended in disaster. Yeah.
Mm.
So we go on here talking about the 3-year reset timeline, but here's the bottom line. The school districts, if a bill was enacted, which is the bill that I wrote for Helen Kerwin, who's a Texas state rep, if that bill was enacted, the school districts would have effective immediately 60 days to prove up that they can pay off their bonds in 3 years. If they can't, they file bankruptcy. During that time, that 3-year window, because we're getting rid of the real estate tax, we institute a sales tax. The sales tax is 15% for 3 years in total, at which point in time, upon stabilization, because of what we can't see, i.e. the 313 agreements, it will drop down to about 11%. There are certain states right now today that can do this exact same model, except they don't need the 15%, i.e. Montana, which can do it with 9%. Texas is at the max of that range only because of what I can't quantify. I can't see it. I know it's there, but we cannot get our hands on the actual math of how bad that is. So that's the reason for the 3 years. And then upon stabilization. But Montana, on the other hand, 9% day one, they're good to go. And it gets rid of the real estate tax effective immediately. Over and above all that, you're forcing the transparency. See, with a sales tax, you go to a grocery store, which, by the way, you wouldn't pay tax on, just like you don't now when you go to the grocery store. But if you went to a drugstore, so let's say you go to a drugstore and you buy a chocolate bar. Okay, the chocolate bar is going to cost you 15 cents. But you must understand that that's transparent. You can see it. That money goes to the state comptroller. State comptroller gets a budget from a school district. State comptroller negotiates that budget. It's all online. State comptroller writes a check to that school district. That check register is all online.
Perfect.
It's there for mom and pop to see every single dime that's being spent. That transparency is mandatory because that stops the world that we're in right now. If you can't see it, you can't object to it. Their whole goal, we're going to control the money, we're going to control the people, and we're not going to let them see the Wizard of Oz under the hood. The problem is the Wizard of Oz has now been exposed all over my website. These people need to be put on trial. So the breaking point, so it says the imminent breaking point. But in reality, you've got 42 million households in harm's way of bankruptcy right now today. If those people went to their bosses, and some of those bosses, let's say, are billionaires, I need a raise in order to afford the roof over my head. Even billionaires are going to be affected by this. This is not a good sign for anybody. This is why this must be dealt with. The domino effect is absolutely catastrophic unless this is dealt with. We either dismantle this in mass, get rid of these taxing entities, the central appraisal districts, prohibit the school districts from raising bonds on the federal market, or the system simply implodes on its own weight, at which point in time the market will implode the system for the world because the bonds won't be worth anything. So in a nutshell, that's what this is going to take. Repeal all property tax in favor of the uniform states sales tax. It gets rid of all the criminals. It makes everything transparent. And it eliminates the debt that's on mom and pop's back and restores their property ownership so that in 20 or 30 years, when their mortgages are paid off, regardless of the property, that's their retirement. And just like you saw in New York this week, what people think they have as retirement is not what they have. It's not there. The money isn't there to pay for it.
So is the tax rate going to be different for each state? Because some states have a lot more fraud than others.
Well, yes, because it is a population issue. It's also a debt issue. But the formula, we already have the formula worked out. Excellent. So all somebody has to do is plug in, here's my population growth, here's the amount of debt that we've got, this is what it's going to take to get out of it. The formula is identical regardless of state. It's a question of how bad is the hidden debt over and above the school district bonds. Like these 313 agreements, these off-balance sheet financing mechanisms, the energy contracts, there are multiple states. They call them different things. So even here in Texas, the 313 agreement, the name was changed to the GETI, G-E-T-I. They have, other states have very similar programs, but they call them different names. This requires truth. This requires an audit to say this is how much. When you give money away, I'm going to point something out. So you have a corporation comes to your local district. If you give me 10 years worth of free real estate taxes, I will give you 50 employees. Okay. You have to understand that's not the state giving anybody anything. That's your money that the state is giving to a private corporation. First thing. Second thing is, what makes you think that that corporation wouldn't go to your state or your district with or without? Did anybody bother to ask? No. Here's free money. It's not free money. It's your money.
Yeah.
Better off in your pocket.
That's what Disney World did in Florida. They, they weren't paying taxes on real estate and so forth. And then DeSantis came in and basically made them start doing it.
Well, but DeSantis has got problems too, because he made a half-baked statement. He never understood. Another politician that doesn't get it. So when he came out and said, we're going to repeal the property tax, he stopped. I mean, you can't do that. You have to repeal the property tax in favor of the uniform state sales tax. Then a few weeks ago, he came out and said, well, we're going to repeal the tax for homesteads. Yeah, he can't do that either. And the reason he can't do that, it's a violation of a state's constitution. So did he know that? Or was he hiding it? I don't know. But I do know that there's no such thing, because under Florida law, which is very similar to Texas law, you've got uniform and equal. You have to treat, under the rule of law, everybody equally. The rule of law doesn't see color. It doesn't see class. The rule of law is to treat people equally, equality. Absolutely. How exactly is it equal if you're giving a tax break to homesteads when that same amount of money has to be paid for, that fraudulent outstanding interest must be paid off. Ergo, his statement would allow the transfer of all that debt onto the remaining constituents. By the way, Governor Abbott tried the exact same crap. So he called it, well, we're going to help people with the taxes. And he came out with 7 rules. And I destroyed those 7 rules by the following morning and took it public. Attorneys are really seriously bad at math, or they don't give a damn. We'll just tell the public whatever they want to hear and let the chips fall where they may. Well, where the chips have fallen, in the case of the executive branch for the state of Texas, is into the hands of the SEC, the FBI, and the DOJ in the form of a criminal complaint. That's what happens when you don't get involved and you allow fraud to continue. You knew it was bad. I've been on this since 2017 in the public eye with regard to the filings of the lawsuits. We didn't take all this public till about 14 months ago, but by then our database was irrefutable. It's insurmountable, the amount of evidence. They can't get away with anything, nor can they come back and say, well, this is wrong or that's wrong. Too late. Why? I have a little paragraph inside the criminal complaint that asked kindly for the FBI, the DOJ, and the SEC, give them 15 days, notice them up, give them 15 days to disprove anything that's in this criminal complaint. I did that because I truly want to know. Crickets. This is the problem. They're caught. So it goes on further into the compound interest trap, but we've already talked about that. The bottom line is this is growing just like the USDebtClock.org by the nanosecond. Therefore, this has to be dealt with. And that's the reality. Repeal all property tax in favor of the uniform states sales tax and get your property back while simultaneously getting the outstanding fraud, liability that's on your back, get it to go away. It's got to be dealt with.
Fantastic. So, Mitch, we could probably go for another 2 hours, but I don't want to hold you up for another 2 hours. But I'd love to have you come back, and because everybody is just absolutely loving this, I'm loving it. I've been down, watching you go down these rabbit holes for a little bit now, so I have a little bit better understanding. But this is brand new for a lot of people, and they're learning a lot. The chat is fire, so this video is going to be fire. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking at, what they can do in their particular county, state, and so forth, getting their local officials to get involved. And how would you where would you tell them to go?
On Travis's channel, realestattemindset.org, there are short form criminal complaints. So if you've got the evidence, and we show you on my site how to go get that evidence from your school district. If you've got the evidence, absolutely file a criminal complaint. You don't even need an attorney to do it. I suggest you get one. But over and above that, if you've got people in your neighborhood, because part of the problem that they depend on, these school districts know, well, mom and pop, they can't hit us individually. Well, except if you get 4, 5, 6, 10 people in your neighborhood that are suffering the exact same consequences of the fraud, well, we've got something we're working on shortly with regard to the class actions. But you could file a lawsuit, those 7, 8, 10 people right now, to go after the Central Appraisal District and to go after the school district. You spread the load of the legal fees and you get an attorney who understands what he's doing. But here's the point. On my website, there's a section, there's 2 pages on this website. The second page is code access because it was designed for attorneys and accountants. So we will give those attorneys and accountants the code to get access to every single one of our filings. We'll give you access to the spreadsheets. It's all there. And that's why I keep saying, don't go and reinvent the wheel. Don't go looking for problems when the big problem is right in front of you. It's the school district bond fraud. Focus on that, which is your school district bonds, but as a direct result, you're paying for it from your central appraisal district. Hit the central appraisal districts, sue them, sue the chief appraiser individually, just like I did. Follow the yellow brick road. And the yellow brick road, coincidentally, I just wrote that document about a week ago. It's on my website. It walks you through how to do this. Don't go looking at all these weird problems that are out there. There's some very smart people, but they're going down the wrong road. This is the road. The fraud is right there. It's right in front of you. These people are guilty. It's that simple. It's just a matter of getting them in front of a judge, a legitimate judge.
Very good. Wow. Great stuff. And thanks for all that you do. Somebody said in the chat, if you charge for all the information that you've probably millions. So it's incredible that you're doing this. Great patriot, great helping people out. So we all thank you so much, and I look forward to getting more involved. Are you going to the next? Are you going to attend by Zoom or whatever the next show in Las Vegas?
Well, yeah, we'll get something worked out. The biggest problem, the reason why I wasn't there last time, is because of the Supreme Court. Like, I'm on call, so if I'm in Vegas and they call, I am going to be one trapped lion. I will not be happy. So, but yeah, we'll get something worked out. No, absolutely. I do want to point out, just for you and your viewers, I just sent you a document. I don't know if you have the ability to post that or not, but inside of that document are 60 points, many of which we didn't even discuss tonight, but it's only on 3 pieces of paper. You can go down the list and say, yep, this is me. Yep, me. And that tells you right on the spot, okay, this is why you should be involved in this. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, this is great because it has lots of links in it as well.
Yeah, those are live links. Yeah, those go to the website for more documents, but there's a part 2 to that as you go down. And that's where all the bullet points are. And there's nobody, no politician, no Central Appraisal District employee, there's nobody that can take the heat from those questions.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, I'll figure out a way to get this posted. Or is there a link to this?
There will be tomorrow morning. Leslie will get that up on my website.
Okay.
But it literally was just finished like 5 minutes before I sent it to you.
Outstanding. Yeah, we can get that link. I'll put it in the description box. So that'll be outstanding, because this is incredible information.
Again, yeah, it'll be under the articles, letters, and discussion section sometime tomorrow morning, as soon as Leslie gets it mounted. But it's coming.
Outstanding. All right, Mitch Vexler, everyone. So he's a hero, no doubt about it. And we look forward to your success, and of course, other people get involved in this. It needs to be every state, every county needs to be involved in this.
Yeah, we're working on a website. It's actually finished. The attorney in Washington doesn't want it released yet, pending Supreme Court remanding my case back to the lower court. But that is designed to have attorneys come to us and say, help us get clients, because we know how to get clients for them across the United States. And it's all about class action. So we'll get the attorneys to pay to get their hands on the documents. We'll sell it to them, and we'll use that money to springboard the class actions across the United States, with the theory being, if necessary, we'll jam up the courts. This is going to have to get dealt with one way or the other. I'm not a fan of doing that, but the bottom line is we need legitimate judges, and we need people, mom and pop, to get involved in their local community, because all these problems stem from the local community. All real estate is local. If 10, 20, 30, 100 people in a locality got together and said, we're not putting up with this nonsense anymore, you walk over to the central appraisal district, you hand them a letter and said, you got exactly 24 hours, turn over the documents. And if you don't, we'll press criminal charges against you, chief appraiser, as well as sue you. Now you've got teeth. And that's what this is going to take. It's all local. Yep. That's why I keep telling everybody from this point forward, stop the rabbit trails. You're not going to get anywhere. The fraud is the way to go. This is how you bring the entire house of cards down. You sue the chief appraiser. You sue the deputy chief appraisers. You sue the RPAs. They lie to you, sue them. That is what is going to have to be necessary until the legitimate judges step up and say, okay, we see it. And by the way, I mean, like I said, the prior courts, although they didn't want to hear the case, they did admit that fraud occurred. So again, not up for debate.
Yeah, there was another individual that really smart guy. He was like you into real estate and so forth in Colorado, and his city, they were building all kind of different, apartments in residential areas, all kind of crazy stuff, and they're rezoning. And so he basically got with the people of the city, which didn't want it, and they came in and stopped it. So grassroots, get involved. You can make it happen.
The power is in the hands of the people. There couldn't be a more true statement. No politician, i.e. in Austin, wants 400 people standing on the lawn at Capitol Hill, snaring at them and saying, yeah, we're done with this. Nobody wants that. It should never have to come to that. We're in this mess because of years of indoctrination where mom and pop believed, well, somebody else will look after it for me. Well, that clearly hasn't worked. Not with 42 million people, households, facing bankruptcy. This is the end game. This needs to be fixed, and it is fixable. That's the beauty of the circumstance we're in. You just can't turn a blind eye towards it. It's got to get fixed. It is fixable.
Absolutely. So, yeah, thanks again, Mitch, and we look forward to in the future hearing from you and seeing your work. Like you pointed out, go to realestatemindset.org, and you also have a YouTube. Don't you? Do you guys have YouTube channel as well? Or?
So, from time to time, I appear with Daniela Camboni. She's a real journalist.
She's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I go there, and then Travis Spencer with Real Estate Mindset on YouTube. I do a video with him mostly on the housing and on the taxation, at least once a week on the taxation problems and updates as to what we're seeing. So usually 2, maybe 3 times a week, I'll appear there.
Wow.
Once every 3 to 4 weeks with Daniela. Those videos usually.
That's where I saw you first, Daniela. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she's very good, and she knows what buttons to push.
And you do too, evidently, and it's making an impact, and we appreciate that. You may save America in a way that few can understand at this point, but I think if they watch this video and other videos and stuff that you're putting out, they'll start to comprehend it, because it does take a while, of research and just watching you over and over again. I'm starting to understand it, but it's a deep rabbit hole and a lot of corruption, and to understand it all, it takes some effort, takes some critical thinking and some research.
For whatever reason, I've got the background to be able to handle it, and so does Leslie. But I'm often astonished, and I mean astonished, how one thing, one statement, one document leads to another, that leads to somebody else, that leads to another document, and it just keeps building upon itself. At this point, it's like, okay, fine, we got a tiger by the tail, so we'll just have to ride it out. But it is crazy how that happens, right? I met you. I wrote a document 5 minutes before we started this. By tomorrow morning, it'll lead to something else. It's just the way it works.
Amazing. Very good. All right, Mitch, thanks so much for your time. And I know people are really going to enjoy this and get a lot out of it.
Perfect. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to lay this out for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you.